Hey Sky fam, it's girl Ariel and welcome back to my channel. If 2025 is your year to become a flight attendant, I'm here for you. We're going to get into all the requirements needed to get hired at Delta Airlines specifically while the application is still open. That's how we can use ChatGPT to make your application even stronger. Let's get into it. If you have planes, amazing destinations, and being a flight attendant on your vision board for 2025, we are going to make this happen. Lucky for you, Delta Airlines is currently hiring. Their application has been open. We never know when applications are going to close, so it is important that as soon as you see this video, you go ahead and apply. I always suggest having a profile created on all of the airlines that you would be willing to apply to, so when their application finally does drop, it's very simple for you to just go ahead and apply. So by the time applications actually open, it's super easy for you. You already have a login, you already have a profile, your resume is already uploaded, and you just have a few simple questions that you have to answer before you can get to the next step. Now, if you watched my last video on Delta Airlines hiring in September, then you may not be able to apply during this opening. What is required is for at least 3 months to have passed since what we call in the industry a TNVT. Thanks, but no thanks. 3 months from that date is when you're able to apply again. Another distinct thing that they say about applying again is that it has to have a different application or reference number. So I would suggest if you plan on applying that you just screenshot the application. You can always reference that screenshot and know for sure that job listing that you applied to last time. If you are looking at the Delta page, it says reference number, and that is the number that I'm referring to. I do highly suggest after this video going and watching my previous Delta Airlines hiring video. I also have one for United and American if you have preferences on what airline you would like to work at, as well as information on how to get hired at a regional airline as well. Now, also on the job listing itself, it says Atlanta, Georgia, and also has the starting pay rate, which is $7.25. So just because the listing destination for the application is Atlanta, Georgia, it's literally always Atlanta, Georgia, unless it's maybe an international one specifically, but that's going to be a language of destination. And if you don't speak other languages, you don't need to worry about that. It's always going to say Atlanta because that is headquarters. That does not mean that is definitely where you're going to get based. Delta has bases all over the country and in other countries. Just because it says Georgia does not mean that you are going to be Atlanta based. You could be Miami, Fort Lauderdale based. You could be New York based. You could be Salt Lake City based. You could be LAX. There's plenty of bases you could be at. It's just because it's headquarters, it'll always say Atlanta. Now, for the starting pay of $7.25, that is the minimum wage in Atlanta, if you do not know. In the state of Georgia, minimum wage is $7.25, okay? So when you are in Atlanta for your training days, which is going to be 7 weeks of training, you are going to be paid that rate. That's why technically it is your starting pay, because it's not your fly rate, it's really your training rate. Once you actually are flying, you're obviously not making $7.25 an hour. Now, the key thing that Delta is looking for in this application is for English speaking specifically, but also bilingual, trilingual, if you speak more than that, polylingual, I think that's right. The main applicants for this specific application are English speaking. They're looking for someone that has a lot of flexibility in their schedule. They're looking for someone that will complete their 7 weeks of training in Atlanta and then will go on to work in any of those bases like the ones I mentioned before or many more. Now, the basic requirements that you will need in order to even be in the running are: you have to have the ability to work in the United States. I have gotten questions about people that hold other countries' passports. As long as you have a valid passport and can work in the United States, you don't have to be a US citizen particularly, but you do have to be able to work in the United States and have a valid passport, and with that passport to be able to travel to wherever Delta flies, because you could be assigned to fly anywhere at any time. You must be at least 21 years old of application, so not of training, not of graduation from training. You have to be 21 when you apply. You must have at least a high school diploma or GED. Along with that passport requirement, you need to have your passport by the time you go to training. You really should have your passport by the time you're applying, but you have to have your passport at minimum. If you make it all the way through the hiring process and make it to the final face-to-face interview, you should have your passport on you at that interview. It really is best practice to already have a passport. Along with having a passport, if you are already a passport holder, you need to make sure that you have at least 30 months of validity left on your passport. So passports are valid for 10 years, so you need to make sure that you have over 2.5 years left before you have to renew. And if you are in the last year or last 6 months of your passport, go ahead and just renew now if you know this is something that you want to do. You will have to take a drug test. I have gotten questions about what is the official panel. I don't know, just don't do it, okay? If it's gonna show up in the drug test, put it down. Along with the drug test, you also have a background check. Now, I get a lot of questions on if there is a weight requirement, if there is a height requirement. There is not specifically a weight nor height requirement. Now, what is required of you is to be able to sit comfortably and safely in the jump seat. That means you're able to fully buckle. Think about when you go on a plane and you sit in the emergency exit row. You have to speak and understand English. You have to be seated within the seatbelt that's already there. You can't get a seatbelt extender. So the same rules apply to the jump seat. None of these things will be tested, obviously, until you make it all the way through this hiring process up until the face-to-face that will be in Atlanta. There you will have to sit in a jump seat, and there is a reach test. So there's not particularly a minimum height, nor is there a maximum height, but you will have to show your ability to close the bin, and it's going to be at the height that it would be on the aircraft. So that is how they measure your height and weight. There is no actual physical number. It is making sure that you can easily, safely sit in the jump seat and you can close an overhead bin. Now, as far as the reach test goes for that overhead bin, it is at around the height of 6'2", around 74 inches. So as long as you can reach that high, you obviously don't need to be that height, but as long as you can reach that high, you're good. Go ahead and test that at home if you want to. If you want to pull out a measuring tape and figure out where that is on the wall and see if you can touch it, probably a good idea. You must be able and willing to work holidays, weekends, overnights, red eyes, especially in the beginning when you don't have much seniority. You're just going to get what you get from scheduling. And that's just aside from specifically at Delta where they just have their few A days, which is like everybody else's reserve days when you are on call. Now, when you're on call, you literally can get anything in the system. So you have to be prepared and ready to go when they call. Along with being a new hire, and as mentioned, you can be based anywhere. Where you are based is completely dependent on company need, especially when you come out of training. Even if you live in Atlanta, you want Atlanta, if they don't need you in Atlanta, they're not going to put you in Atlanta. And it's nothing against you, it is just based off of company need. Now, that is not to say that you will never be based in Atlanta, but it'll be based off of as openings come available. Although those are the minimum requirements, the things that'll get you slightly shortlisted in the pile of applicants that apply are if you have at least 1 year of experience as a flight attendant. There's always a few groups that I feel like are especially hired in this position. That is people that have been in food and bev, hospitality, and healthcare. Now, that's not to say that people outside of those industries do not get hired. That's absolutely not true. But if you have worked in any of those three spaces, you typically get to the next step a little faster. There are people that work at amusement parks, former law enforcement, and even teachers I have met within the industry. There is not specific backgrounds that they may want in particular. This is just in my own experience, what I have seen with the application process. Also, if you have a bachelor's degree or higher, you may be more competitive in the application process. It is not required. Again, you actually don't need any college degree. The highest education minimum requirement is a high school diploma or a GED equivalent. One of the things that will make your application very strong is having a resume that is super down pack SEO. If you don't know what SEO, it's search engine optimization. That's basically just saying having strong keywords because an individual person is not looking at your resume anymore. Your resume is going to go through an automated, computerized system. So if you have some of the right words in there, your application will get through. That's extremely important to look at. Even if you want to spruce up your resume with ChatGPT, or another specific resume building AI, that is okay. You shouldn't be lying about what you do, and you should be reading over everything that you put on there that is changed But if you just use it for purpose of making your application strong in its wording, then you are going to do yourself a favor. A prompt you could use is using my current resume, improve it by using the Delta Airlines flight attendant application with strong SEO that puts an emphasis on my experience that is transferable to being a flight attendant and puts safety first. Once you've completed that, you'll want to input your current resume. It'll analyze it, take all the information from Delta Airlines online application and give you your new resume. You want someone to look over your resume, to go through the steps of the interview process with you, to do specific face-to-face interview prep or virtual prep, which is going to be the step before the face-to-face interview, and continue after that. To prepare you for training, make sure you take a look at the link in the description box to book your call. Now, the bases available to new hires once you have made it through the 7 weeks of training are Atlanta, Boston, Cincinnati, Detroit, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami are dual bases. That means you'll be covering both of those airports. Honolulu, Los Angeles, Orlando, Minneapolis, New York. Now, New York is like Miami, Fort Lauderdale. It says New York, not like JFK or LaGuardia, because you will have to cover both. That's also a dual base. Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, and Salt Lake City are all bases that you could potentially be based at as soon as you come out of training. I'm often asked, now that I have been a flight attendant for almost 5 years, would I still do it if I went back and started all over again? And to answer that, 1000%. In particular, the flexibility that this career provides. Now, a conversation that has to be had is that if you are in a career at this time, it is likely that when you start as a flight attendant, you will receive a pay cut. This is because dependent on where you are working and their monthly minimum that the companies schedule you, you're likely looking around 74 hours a month. Now, to most people, that is a part-time job and not a full-time job. But being a flight attendant is a full-time position. And so it is something you do have to prepare, that you do have to think of when you go in to apply and when you go to training. Because actually, Delta, unlike a lot of other airlines, does pay you while you are in training. A lot of other airlines do not pay you in training. They may pay you a lump sum or a bonus after you have completed training. That's something you will have to deliberate. I don't think it's something that should stop you from this career. I think you just have to put yourself in the right place to prepare to be in that space, to prepare to be away for that amount of time and be able to make sure that your bills in your life will still be there for you to return to when you come back from training. If this is your first time applying, or if you have applied multiple times and you continually get TNBT messages, I would definitely suggest booking a one-on-one call with me. During that call, we can cover any and everything you have questions about, from the application process through the hiring process and preparing for training. In particular, we can go over interview preparation so that you are in the best position possible to go into your face-to-face interview and absolutely nail it. If you found any of this information helpful, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Please leave a comment below if you are applying, if you have a CGO, or if you have any questions at all. I will be happy to answer every single one of them in the comment section. Until next time, bye Sky Fam.